Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really cool episode for you. This is a special sneak preview and really a debut for YouTube for the brand new updated for 2018 Monta Oceanking. Now, you may recall my review of the original Oceanking, and it was pretty shiningly positive review, although there were a couple of design choices that, I would have considered, semi shortcomings, but I have to say with this new release, they've pretty much outdone themselves once again. It's, to me anyway, a better watch in pretty much every measurable way, and they've actually brought the price down, which makes it that much more amazing. So really honored to be able to bring this to you guys as a YouTube first, but a little bit about Monta before we jump in. First of all, Monta was founded just recently, back in 2015. They are a Swiss-made brand. They are actually headquartered out of the US, though, which is great. So as far as, me being located in the US, it really works out well for support and service-wise. And they're really a micro-brand startup that have their eye on that entry-level luxury market. And I think it's a pretty wide market right now, and it seems like those are really the name brand Swiss brands that are actually doing still pretty well, or kind of that entry-level luxury. So really, I think, this really is filling a space that is really hot right now. I mean, there are some parts of the market I would say that are a little bit oversaturated, and I would say that's more of just the standard entry level to mid-tier. There's just a lot of competition out there, and it shows because the prices are really competitive, to say the least, these days. As far as the specs you can get at the prices, it's really a renaissance for the $500 to $1,000 automatic wristwatch game right now. So with that being said, I think there's actually a very special place, some really fine reserved air where Monta and their brand live, along with a couple of other select brands that are out there right now that are really making all the right moves. But first, let's go ahead and talk about the type of watch. So this is, of course, a dive watch, and some key common characteristics in design language when you're looking for a dive watch. Of course, you're going to want something that's water resistant, normally through some type of screw down crown, something that's going to be tough, legible, with a dive time bezel and a diver's extension if on bracelet. Now, this particular model is, of course, the Oceanking. You can call it the second gen, the V2. I don't know, this is so new right now that there isn't a nickname for it. So I was thinking OKV2 for Oceanking version 2. But who knows what will end up catching on. But this particular model is just a real gem, and I'm really excited to tell you guys more. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get this piece in hand. Okay. So as you can see, the general aesthetic is definitely very true to the original Oceanking. But there are quite a few differences and really quite a few upgrades. But let's go ahead and get into some of the details first. So as far as the pricing goes, the full retail price on these, once they get out of the basically the pre-order phase, is going to be $19.25, which I think is an amazing value for what you're getting. But right now, it's an even better value if you can get in on that pre-order, which you can get this piece for $17.30. And that's direct from Monta. You're going to get, your full 2-year warranty and everything like that. You're going to get great customer service, and you're going to be part of a pretty exclusive club, which I think is pretty awesome. And I can speak to that as, from experience as being a Monta Triumph owner myself. Now, if you want it on rubber, once you get to full retail, this will be $1,700. But if you can, get on the pre-order pretty much before these are fully released and ready to go, you can actually get in at $1,530, which I think still is an outstanding value for what you're getting. I mean, these prices are pretty much kind of gray market prices for mid-tier brands, and there's really not a mid-tier brand that I can think of that's going to be competing with this quality-wise anyway, and definitely not at this price point. I'd say quality-wise, you're definitely going to be standing next to Tudor or you know, some of the more entry-level Omegas, but those are going to be priced way above this. And of course, yes, you know, there's going to be the in-house movement factor, but I think we're going to talk about, we'll cover movement and whatnot later on in the review, but I think you'll see that the movement that is powering this beast is actually quite nice and still quite, you know, it's offering a lot of value for money. So, although we did flash the specs across the screen there in the beginning of the video, I did want to make sure to point out that when I personally got some measurements, I thought it would be worth clearing up a little bit for you guys. So, this watch is advertised at 40.7 millimeters, but actually I was getting more of 40.7 from the bezel. And as you can see, the bezel is a bit proud of the case because there is an angle there. If you can notice, it does bow out a bit. But if you actually measure, you know, just the case itself, I'd say it's a lot closer to just 40 millimeters, which is really a sweet spot. And then of course, with the way that these lugs are shaped, it really just, you know, ultimate pretty much proportions on the wrist. Super nice. And then of course, the lug to lug width, which many of you with smaller wrists are definitely very interested in, is going to be 49 millimeters, which is definitely very manageable. And then the height comes in actually just under 12 millimeters at 11.9. So nice and thin profile there, especially when you take a look at that mid case. Before, it was definitely much more of a slab side case, but now I think it's just a lot more balanced and does visually give you a little bit more thinness, as well as of course it's physically a bit thinner as well. So a really nice feature of the last model, of course, was the Sapphire Crystal. This one is now flat with 7 layers of air coating, which really help that inky black dial just show off the depth. And you can see that it is, you know, looking very black. It's not, and this is a reflective dial, so if it didn't have all this AR coating, what you would see is basically a reflection of the glass reflecting off of the dial, reflecting off of the glass, reflecting off of the dial. But as you can see, of course, you know, if I put the studio light directly on it, you are going to be able to see reflection, but you know, that's pretty unrealistic. But you can really tell that. And then also what aids in the legibility is the fact that they used a flat sapphire crystal, so that's also really nice and ties into the whole, you know, I'd say the execution here and those design elements that kind of all add up to give you the watch as a whole, which I think is a real home run. So as far as the bezel goes, really great. And one of the main updates you're going to notice here, especially when we get to the loom shot, is this is actually a fully loomed ceramic bezel insert. And I mean, take a look at the details on this ceramic insert. I mean, there's no blobs or splotches or soft lines anywhere. This is just executed super fine. And that's actually lumen there, which is really nice. And of course, that patented, oh man, 60 click bezel. I'll try not to talk too much over it. As you can see, I mean, I'm trying to make some play in there. There's none. This 60 click bezel is more dialed in than 90% of the 120 click bezels that I've ever tried. So I mean, that's a true testament to the tolerances and just the innovative side and the execution side of the Monta brand. And I'm just really, again, just amazingly impressed. I mean, seriously, this thing is just, it's smooth, it's notchy at the same time. It's just pretty much what you want in a dive bezel. Even with these gloves, I can easily grasp it because of these beautiful teeth here, which not only are functionally nice and grippable, but also aesthetically very nice. And you know, there's even like that bevel there at the top that just adds, you know, just even more visual interest. There's just so much going on this watch. But it's not a busy watch in any means. There's just so many fine details to where at a first glance it's just instantly legible, but it's really at second, third, and fourth glance where you really fall in love with those fine details. So the crown is of course screw down, but now we have added these beautiful crown guards here that really flow super nice with the case. They're really non-obtrusive at all, and they just butt up. Look at how tight those tolerances are as far as the crown guards, wrapped around super nicely. Very nice round kind of organic shape. Reminds me a lot of the crown guards from the Oris Aquis, and you know, people don't really complain too much about the looks of the Aquis, so I think that's really a fair comparison to make. There, I think it looks really great. Of course, similar, that kind of cupcake crown with the cupcake bezel there. Really, really nice. And just really finely executed, just like before. But now, you just get a little bit of added functionality and a little added protection there, because you do have, one, you have crown guards, and then two, from the bezel standpoint, you have the fully loomed bezel, which is just great. Now, as far as the case back, let's take a look here. As you can see, really nicely done, super svelte. You know, the SkyQuest does offer a see-through case back, and I think that would have been a pretty cool touch for the Oceanking, but it's actually exclusive to the SkyQuest, which is their GMT model. And I can understand, of course, wanting because the watches share so much, you know, they share the same movements, basically. They share the same case, bracelets. It's nice to have some differentiation in the line. And of course, I think that's understandable. And for the diver to have the solid case back, it really fits that classic kind of dive watch formula, if you will. So divers definitely aren't really known for their display case backs. It's a bit of a shame though, because the movement that's in here is actually quite worthy of your viewing. You know, it's not something that you'll see in very many divers or really many watches at this price point. So it's really, I think, a nice choice. And then of course, unfortunately, it is underneath the case back, but that is just finely executed. And talking about the movement, now what's powering this particular watch is actually the SW300, which of course is Sellita's variant on the 2892. So what a lot of people don't know about these movements are, they're just generally a higher grade movement. It's not just the same old generic 2824, which of course is a workhorse movement, but these movements are actually exceptionally thin, and also they're just finished generally to a higher grade. There's not really, a normal spec. They're pretty much all around elaborate grade, and as far as you're going to get the decorations and the tolerances and pretty much the in-house level of tuning that's done is just going to be at a higher level. There's not really going to be that. Basically the baseline for the SW300 and 2892 is going to be a level above that of the 2824, which is really nice. And here they're actually taking advantage of that, because you are getting that great thinness now added to the case. So a little bit about the SW300. Of course, it has a nice 4 Hz sweep, so that's 8 ticks per second. And then you have the 38-hour power reserve. And then it is, of course, in-house chronometer tuned to be within -4 and +6 seconds a day. And then, I mean, wow. So this is just a lot that you're getting here, and it's Swiss made. So, you know, there's a lot of companies now that are putting out, and it's been quite a little bit of a revolution for really passionate watchmakers of micro brands, because there are a lot of actually in-house tuned options. The crazy thing is this is in-house tuned and it's also Swiss made, so it's just another level there as far as the quality control and the fit, finish, and just the level of execution you're going to get with Monta is just head and shoulders above kind of what you're going to see in this price range. So with that said, I guess I can bring the Triumph into view here so you can see the 38.5mm Triumph. It's basically now going to have a very similar silhouette, as you can see. Of course, this does have the polished edge there versus the brushed. but the thinness level, and then because the movement's the same, and you know what, let's go ahead and get a shot of the movement here, just for those of you who may not have experience with the SW300. As you can see, just a gorgeous movement, and honestly, these are not cheap movement, guys. These movements are definitely found in much more expensive watches, and if they were cheap, you would probably see them being used a lot more often. So really gorgeous there, you know, with the custom rotor. Everything is just super finely done, not overdone, you know, it's not super crazy high decorate or anything like that, but it's a movement that definitely the finishing is it's not decorative, if you will. It's more it's really just shows the substantial build quality and finishing of the movement and the care that was taken when assembling. So really just a gorgeous piece. So we'll go ahead and clip that back. We will leave this in frame for now so we can get some comparatives as far as some of the changes in the clasp and whatnot. But let's move on. As you can see across the dial there, it is 304 meters water resistant, or 1,000 feet. It does have a 20 millimeter lug width, and then you have, of course, the solid end links and that beautiful articulated 3-link oyster style bracelet. Just super nice. Great taper. Tapers down to about 16 millimeters at the smallest point, and then you're gonna have the bracelet that comes in around 19 millimeters. And the big change for the update is now you have a glide lock style. So you will have toolless adjustment there to dial it in and just make sure that you're getting just the perfect fit for yourself. And let's say it's a hot day and you need to get a couple clicks of relief and really let your you know, your wrist expand and breathe, but then at the same time, if you really need to, you can pull it all the way out and maybe even use as a diver's extension. So that's really nice. But also, of course, these do all come on a really great factory NATO, as well as some of the most amazing factory rubber strap options. But as you can see, this thing is fully milled, just gorgeous. Of course, a lot of it does carry over as far as aesthetically, but as you can see here, it's a bit longer, which I'm sure it has to do with the adjustability and having a little bit more track there. But the finishing is pretty similar. But then, of course, now it's sealed up, so you don't have to have those micro adjust holes. But the puck system, you know, this isn't an off-the-shelf clasp in any means. I mean, everything was fully designed to work together. And then you can actually also notice another change is that the medallion is now just kind of etched in there. It's nice and flat, flush, nothing to catch on, versus this model, which I didn't personally have any problems with it catching on anything, but you know, that is something to be aware of. I do like the look of the medallion being a little bit 3D there versus the flat, but I can totally understand why that would be the case. So what else? If I haven't mentioned it, this is actually a prototype. This was one of the prototypes that they had put together for Baselworld. There was actually supposed to be more, but a story that you may not know that I was privy to is that while they were putting together the dials originally, they actually did the hole for the dial. Of course, there's a hole in the middle for the arms to go through. They did them slightly too large because they were preparing the SkyQuest model. And of course that is a GMT watch and GMT movement, so it actually does have a slightly larger hole, and at angle for a three-hander you were actually able to see the hole. So what Monta had to do was go back to their dial maker and say, hey, you know, beg and plead, basically, can we get this done for Baselworld? So these were pretty much all hand done, and this particular one, if you haven't noticed, there is a slight defect in it, and it is that the actual date window there at 6 o'clock, it is slightly canted, so it's a little bit off center there. But I think the fact that this is not a non-production model, I mean, it is what it is. They had to get them done for Baselworld, and I'm really glad that they did, and they were able to get it out the door so that I could get this, you know, basically in hand and you know, in this video for you guys, so you guys could take a look. I know that for me, as somebody who's owned tons of watches and still do, I mean, I don't really flip my watches, so all the videos in my history here that you're going to see, that in the channel history, those are all of watches that I have still. And you know, it's rare that something comes along and just really you know, hits all the right notes, and I feel like this Monta Oceanking really sings. So super impressed with that. So let's go ahead and get this on the wrist. Okay, as you can see, those are just magic proportions. Under 12 millimeters thick, 40 millimeters about, and then you got the 49 millimeter lug to lug. And I do, of course, have a 7 1/4 inch wrist, which I guess average-wise would be on probably the larger side of average, but wouldn't be definitely considered a big wrist like you would have if maybe you were closer to the 8-inch category. And of course, if you had something like a 6 or a 6.5 inch wrist, you'd probably be faring more on the smaller side. I think personally, because of the shape of this case, it actually wears well enough to where this thing would look good on a 6.5 inch wrist, but also would look good on an 8-inch wrist because of the shape of the lugs. The dial, it is slightly larger. They push the indices out to the edges there. You see that beautiful, you know, I don't want to call it a chapter ring because it's actually just plain there. There's probably a better word for it, like a rehaut. But as you can see, it just adds that kind of 3D nature, and it really pushes the dial out, which does visually make although it is of course not a big watch, it does give the watch a little bit more presence, a little bit more legibility, and I think it really just adds a modern look to it. You might be used to seeing those kind of cutout inserts there. They were really popularized by the Tudor Pelagos, which is also a great watch. And you know, I think it just really looks great here, and it just adds a little bit of extra dimension, but it's a fine touch of dimension. It's not something that's really in your face. It's something that you notice as you appreciate the dial. And then, of course, now the indices are all fully applied. Before it was kind of an offset. You just had the 12, 3, and 9 that were applied, and then everything else was printed, and now it is fully applied there, which is great. And then it really ties in now with the fully loomed bezel insert, and that ceramic is just so finely done. So as you can see on wrist, wears really nice, lays super flat, and is infinitely comfortable with this 3-link setup. So I mean, I gotta say, super impressed. This thing is just a dream to wear. That taper really just helps with, you know, the range of motion. I do wear my watches a little bit lower on the wrist probably than classically done, where a lot of people will wear it over their wrist bone. I like to wear it a little bit looser to where it's going to be on the other side of my wrist bone. For me personally, I don't like to wear bracelets or straps so tight that they are completely stationary on my wrist. I like to have a little bit of movement in there. So, and then of course I write with my left hand, so I wear my watches on the right hand, which is why you've seen me on all my reviews with the watch on my right wrist. So really great on the wrist. I mean, there's really not much I can say, but I can show you guys. So just to kind of give you an idea of the comfort level there. Really nice balance. Of course, you do have a more substantial clasp at the bottom, which does help anchor the watch well. One of the things that, if you've ever had dive watches, that's something that can throw you off, is when you have, you know, this big bulbous kind of you know, upper piece there for the head, but then the bracelet and the clasp, if they underdo it, it basically adds to more motion on the wrist. Here it's just anchored really nicely. This thing isn't going to go anywhere. So really nice. Let's go ahead and get some loom shots ready. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights. So as you can see, that fully loomed bezel insert just plays fantastically. And then of course you have that larger indice at the 12 o'clock, so you have that automatic orientation. And then at the 6, on the opposite side is kind of the miniature indice, because there's the date window there. and the sword hands look great. Everything looks absolutely awesome. Of course, this is BGW9, which is kind of the preferred choice when it comes to lume. C3 is a bit more potent, but the thing about C3 is during the daylight, you know, when it's fully lit and it's not glowing, it's not going to appear as white. One of the nice things about BGW9 is it's going to appear very white in daylight, but then when you actually have it glowing, then you're going to get a really nice, cool, kind of bluish green tone. So let's actually get some shots here, some low light transition for you. As you can see, what I like to do for these shots is just kind of give you an idea, because my hot studio lights, they do a great job of simulating kind of direct sunlight, but you're not always going to be outside with your watch. You know, you're going to spend a lot of time indoors, in vehicles, transitioning in between the two from outside. So I think it's a really nice indicator of how the dial plays. Of course, this is a black dial, so it's not going to be too indicative as far as there's going to be much of a difference between the black that you're going to catch and whatever lighting. It's really just going to be a question of how glossy and how the inkiness and that super black depth you might get. But the nice thing about the low light transition is you can actually take a look at the finishing, and I mean, look at that brushing. Extremely tight and fine and uniform, and the lighting here won't wash that out when you have the low lights. When I do have my super bright lights on, it does wash out a lot of that richness in the polishing and the brushing, and it does give you a nice look at kind of what the finishing looks like. But I think here you get a little bit more of a truer look as far as the way the light will dance off of this particular piece. All right, so while the camera's color balance gets back to play there, let's go ahead and kind of cover closing thoughts. Well, on the wrist, of course, the proportions are just classic. Really comfortable and balanced wear. There's pretty much no complaint that I can give from that standpoint. Now, as far as model variants go, this particular model is the gloss black dial with a, you know, of course, the black ceramic insert. There's also an option for this same dial with a steel bezel, which is really nice. And what the steel bezel does, it just makes it feel a little bit smaller visually, because now you're just getting more focused on just the dial versus kind of the extension of the dial, which is the bezel insert. So that's a nice thing for visually if you want it to appear a little bit smaller, and it also does give it a little bit more of a retro look. And then of course you do have the matte black dial, which is going to have the gilt indices and hands, so those beautiful gold accents. And then you're going to also have it with the black ceramic bezel. Really nice touch, and I think that's going to be a real big hit because, of course, you know, kind of those color combinations have become really popular lately, and they're just a great throwback. Me personally, I do like this more modern take. I think it's gorgeous, especially with the red text across the dial there for Oceanking. And then one of the nice things is they've actually updated the blue models. So you're gonna have two blue dial options. One of them is the blue sunburst dial, which I'm really excited about. If you're a fan of the channel, you know I love blue dial watches, especially blue sunburst, especially blue sunburst divers. So that's just kind of like, you know, it's hitting. I'm really looking forward to seeing that one in the flesh, because I think that one's going to be pretty killer. And of course, it's going to have a ceramic bezel insert, which is great, in blue. So everything's going to match. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that one's going to look in the flesh. And then there's actually a kind of wet gloss blue dial with a steel bezel insert, which I think is also a really great option, and just offers a little bit more versatility, something a little bit more sedate, of course, and it's going to be a little bit more flexible and versatile as far as, you know, what you're going to wear with it. Obviously, not everybody's always going to wear these big, bright, vibrant blue colors. So to have something that's a little bit more of a sedate, understated option is really cool to have. And then of course these are offered on the factory bracelet, or there are two different strap options. You can have it on the blue or the black rubber, and of course Monta's parent company being Everest bands, you guys know that they pretty much make the best Rolex aftermarket rubber strap option. So now you can have that same quality on your Monta, which is insane. And people are paying multiples of hundreds of dollars for those straps. And it's something that you can get as an option actually to save money on your Monta, which is crazy. And then they do have these really great premium nails they just recently released, which I'll be doing a full review on my channel. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. But yeah, so there's just a lot of different options, from the bracelets, you know, and straps, to the dials, to the bezel options. And I think they're all, I mean, and that's just for the Oceanking. Now, if you want to even extend that to the SkyQuest, which is their GMT model, then you have pretty much those all same options, but now for GMT, which is great. So if you're a big traveler, and also you're going to get that display case back. So there's just a lot to love there. And then of course, you know, I love the Triumph. You could really almost have a 3-watch collection with just Montas. If they came out with a chronograph next, then yeah, for sure, then you definitely could. So I've just been super impressed. I think as far as comparables go, again, I would say this is really somewhere between that Tudor Black Bay, Omega Seamaster Professional range. You know, it's just stands up to the big boys, and at a much lower price. And even here, the full retail price is beneath gray market for those other brands, which is pretty crazy. So really great. You know, you're getting that quality that's up there, and you're getting it probably a price that's much closer to, you know, a Seiko Marine Master 300 as far as pricing goes. And you're going to get a watch that's going to be way more wearable than a Marine Master, because it's going to be a lot thinner. It's going to be more serviceable as well, which is another plus about moving to the SW300 movement and moving away from the really cool Eterna movement, which I think was really strongly spec'd. But at the same time, you know, if it's not in-house, it's almost better to have a more universally serviceable movement if it's already not in-house. So I think that was just a great move on their part. And honestly, I've been dying for more brands to start putting these thinner SW300 movements and ETA 2892s into watches. So it's really I'm really glad to see, you know, them get put into a watch, and the watch actually take advantage of the thinness in the movement. So you're getting a thin movement inside of a thin watch, versus sometimes you might get that thinner movement, let's say in a Longines, but then the case ends up still being pretty thick regardless. So it's one of those things where I think they just have done such a great job with the form factor and really balancing the functionality as well. So I'd say the bottom line here is, I mean, this is still pretty much the ultimate affordable Grail diver. I mean, this is Grail level stuff. This is that type of watch where, as somebody who shops a lot in the mid-tier and entry level, this could be that watch you save up for, and this is like your legit watch. Or it could also be, on the other side of that token, it could be your super wearable watch if you're into more high-end pieces. You know, maybe you already have a Submariner, and you love your Everest strap on there, and maybe you just want to have another option. You can mix it up, different dial colors. Maybe you want to get a Sunburst Blue, something like that. I think that's really great that you can have these type of options. And you know, again, the nice thing about this watch is that it's from the details and down to the design. There's a lot of watches out there that you get that people kind of throw out the words, you know, bang per buck with. And really a lot of the times where they save money is in the design, because a lot of them are kind of blatant homages to other watches, namely the Rolex Submariner. This piece, you know, it's definitely not an homage. It does pay homage, I'd say, in the more true form of paying respect to all those mid-century, you know, early dive watches, without actually looking like them or feeling like them. It just has that similar aesthetic, and you could imagine kind of, you know, rewinding back into the 50s and 60s and having one of these kind of on your wrist. And of course, some of the more modern aesthetics and features would blow people away as far as the quality goes. But I think just the look on paper, this is just such a timeless design. This is not something that's going to be going out of style anytime soon. This is something that you could add to your collection, and I think it would find a really great place there. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do hit like, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more content just like this, and go ahead and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the new releases. All right, guys, so appreciate you guys watching. As usual, the channel's really going in a great direction. We've had a really strong year, and I'm looking forward to bringing you guys more. Thanks.